All right, Dave, picture this. You start a whole movie podcast in the summertime. You promise your listeners that you're going to give them the real, hard hitting cultural analysis. You promise them week to week, but there's so much stuff to talk about, you end up falling pretty far behind, and your brain starts filling up with all these ideas, and you think you're to become that guy from Eraserhead. What do?
Summer medley episode?
That's right! Instead of going deep into one movie, we're going to talk rapid fire about a bunch of the hits and not hits from the summer. We're going Tom Cruise to superheroes, horror franchises, and live action cartoons. Let's go.
Welcome to Picture This, the podcast where we examine the weekly movie box office and ask, what do movie-going trends say about American culture? I'm Dave. Over the last 10 years, I've worked for a filmmaker, an agent, and at a movie studio in movie marketing.
I'm Max. I'm a screenwriter and the son of an independent movie theater owner who has a lot of opinions on movies.
Today, we're going to do something a little different than we've done in the past. Max and I are going to talk about a bunch of movies, the success and the failures of which have been rattling around in our heads all summer. We won't rant and rave about one specific film on this episode. Instead, we're going to be spreading around our ranting and raving kind of all over the place. We're going to try to keep each specific topic a little bit short and sweet and specific to this summer at the box office.
Yeah, well, but Dave, what is the summer really? What is movie summer? When does summer movie season actually start? Because it used to be very specific when we were kids, but like now, Captain America came out in February.
This is interesting. We're already starting our debate before we even really get into the specific topics. We're just even going to debate when summer starts. Yeah, dude, that's a great question. I feel like it used to be in the movie release schedule. Memorial Day weekend was like the first big kickoff for like a big movie. And I don't know who was the first to do it, but I remember a couple years ago, Universal started releasing the Fast and Furious movies earlier and earlier to where I think the Fast X movie came out in April. And it was claimed to be like this summer's biggest hit.
That's very odd. I think actually what kicked it off, I think it was The Matrix in 1999, because that movie came out in March and it changed the history of film. And then studios were like, wait a minute, we don't just have to release big movies in the summer. We can release them whenever we want. And that has changed things in interesting ways.
I do know that I've been in a couple meetings on the marketing side where they might call it a summer movie, but especially in that March and April window, oftentimes studios will try to time a release when the most amount of kids are on spring break. And I've seen charts where they literally list out, based on the nation, 40% of schools are on spring break, 60% of schools are on spring break this week, and they try to game the system that way. But I personally do think that's cheating a little bit to call that a summer movie. To me, it feels like the earliest you could creep up to that is May.
Yeah, and that's what we did for when we looked at this summer schedule. We started anything that kind of released in May and was meant to garner that attention. So we've broken this up into a couple different categories, and we're going to start with like the big headline of the summer, which is superheroes.
First topic on our medley, let's talk superheroes. Specifically, Max, on our last episode, we highlighted the movie Superman, the James Gunn 2025 release that came out. And spoiler alert, but Max went really hard on it.
I had some strong takes. I certainly had some strong opinions.
He was not a fan. I was more of a fan. I did think it was more successful. One question I didn't ask you on the last pod, Max, was, do you not like fun?
Oh, you thought that movie was fun? That's interesting. Describe to me what you thought was fun about that film.
Yes, dude, I was more of a fan of Superman than you were. I did think it was fun. I think you did have a bunch of great notes to it. But we ended the episode talking a little bit about Eddington, because one of the things that Superman did was like it did bring up some modern day topics that were divisive. There were themes of Israel and Palestine. There were themes of Russia and Ukraine. There were themes of tech money in politics. And all those were brought up interestingly, even in a superhero movie, to me.
I don't think you're wrong about any of that. And like real talk right now, I'm writing a major fiction podcast project with some friends of mine, and it's all about money and tech and the corruption that comes along with that. So these are things that really interest me. And I think maybe that's part of why I felt so let down by Superman, is because I mean, my dad got out of that movie, and again, like my dad's an independent movie theater owner. He owned his own theater for 50 years. Movies are the most important thing to him. And when he came out, he's like, a movie couldn't decide what movie it wanted to be. I don't know if it explored those things as much as it like looked at them. I mean, from the letterbox reviews that I wrote, for a lot of people, just looking at it was very satisfying because a lot of modern corporate film is so devoid and so afraid to look at anything that I think it was really satisfying, especially that out of all the heroes that we see out there in the world, that Superman looked at these things.
It sounds like I was less hopeful of the themes and the aspirations of the movie, and I think it almost sounds like you had higher hopes for a movie like that.
I mean, I just think if you're going to stick your foot in the door, you got to walk through. That's my beef with this movie, right? And it's just like, okay, is this movie about him and his relationship with his parents? Is it about Lex Luthor's influence on politics? Is it about how powerful nations get away with mass murder and all other sorts of horrible things? Or is it about misinformation in the media? You know, like there was just, it opened up a lot of doors, and I felt like in some of them, I didn't even walk through them.
But Max, we're in a world where like we as a society can't solve these problems. So James Gunn ain't gonna solve it in 2 hours.
I don't want you to solve it. I have no expectations that anybody would solve these problems.
Yeah.
Even me. To be clear for all the listeners. But I don't know, man. Like,
we'll agree to disagree. But I will say your comment about bringing up those themes, and if you're going to open the door, you better walk through. It's a good transition to talk about the movie Eddington, because you want to talk about a movie that fucking opens the door and walks through. That movie, it explores some dark themes about where America is now. It is challenging, and even the reviews online are pretty polarizing, but I think it's way funnier than the marketing portrays. But it wrestles with some serious issues that we're dealing with in America.
I'm so refreshed, Dave, to hear you say that it's funny, and then so shocked that they made no attempt at all in the marketing campaign to let us know that, because it's so important when you are delving into really serious issues, and like that you give the audience a different reason to show up other than the homework that you're trying to assign them.
Absolutely. How A24 portrayed Eddington, Max and I are both a little at a loss because it misses a lot of the nuance. I will say what it does nail is that the movie ultimately is a sad snapshot at the current state of America. But especially in marketing, to get people interested in it, you need to convey that there is a mixture of emotion and not just despair, which I think that was what I saw in a lot of the marketing.
Yeah, my buddy saw it. He said, you know all the things you hate on the internet? It's all those things in one movie. And I was like, well, that's a tough. And look, marketing despair can't be easy. I don't envy the people who tried to figure it out. And I'm looking at the marketing that they had, and it was all so mysterious. And I think they were hoping that the cachet of Ari Aster and Joaquin and Pedro Pascal and A24 itself would be enough to create some sort of intrigue in the film. And it's like, yeah, it intrigued me, but it also just kind of confused me, and it made me go, okay, what? Like, it didn't hook me.
Yeah, I agree. The way you market a movie, it is different than the movie experience, and then I would argue should be different from the movie experience. You're not going to capture what a 2-hour experience is going to be in a 2-minute movie trailer, or even worse, and now in social media, a 6-second bumper of what the movie is. So oftentimes you have to simplify what the movie is. What I could see A24 argue for their marketing is, if we introduce some sort of humor into the trailer plus sadness, isn't that going to confuse them even more? So I don't know if adding comedy into the marketing would necessarily help, but the marketing storyline that they settled on just left a bad taste in people's mouths who haven't even seen it yet.
Yeah, it did not answer the question, why should I leave my house for this? And that's your job as a movie marketer. Why should the average American leave their house to go watch this movie? To kind of bring it back around here, here's what Superman did well. They didn't market any of the thoughtful stuff in the movie. They just marketed Superman. And everybody went, oh yeah, like I'll leave my house to go watch Superman. And then they got there, and there was other stuff in the movie. And because there's other stuff in the movie, like we talked about with Sinners, there was other stuff for people to talk about and generate press on. And that's probably helped propel the movie into a couple of successful weeks.
100% agree, Max, on the Superman marketing. The simplicity really helped. Totally agree.
So you saw Fantastic Four, which I haven't seen yet, but honestly, I'm not hearing great stuff about it. So what, Dave, how does this compare to our Superman Eddington?
So Fantastic Four came out box office wise and critics wise. It was very close to the Superman experience. It was over $100 million domestically. It earned opening weekend. The Rotten Tomato scores were around the same level of really high. And I went opening weekend and did not like it. Max, I think a lot of the notes that you have on Superman and how it didn't earn any of its moments for the character. The structure of Fantastic Four was satisfying to, I think, what your criteria is, but it still just felt so deliberate and I would say boring. I was surprised that I was yawning through a lot of the movie.
I mean, look, I'm just surprised. This is like the fifth time they've tried to do Fantastic Four. I think there's a reason why it doesn't fucking work. I mean, he's stretchy, right? Like, the thing is, he's like stronger than the average person, but he's made of rock. Then there's a guy who like lights on fire and flies around, and it's just like compared to the Avengers, that's not that interesting. It's kind of goofy and weird. And so trying to adapt this team is very, very difficult. And then you also have to have, for some fucking reason, a giant demon, alien, robot, something, I don't know who Galactus is, come to a city and trying to destroy the Earth or destroy an entire city, which we just saw in Superman and we've seen in every other fucking superhero movie. Why does it always have to be a giant city destroyed? There's nothing about the story that seemed like they were treading over new ground.
I totally agree in the third act issues, which are typical Marvel issues if you've been following the Marvel experience, which is giant CGI fight with some sort of giant monster.
It's just like another reason why I didn't like the first Guardians movie is it felt like, and when I watched that, I was like, I'm getting tired of seeing this. But people, I don't know, people keep going.
I think an interesting comparison for Superman and Fantastic Four, not just that they opened 2 weeks away from each other, not just because they were in pivotal moments of the DC universe and the Marvel universe, respectively, but both of those comics were from an earlier, simpler time in America. Superman's original phrase was truth, justice, and the American way. The Fantastic Four were a very pro-America type of superheroes where they weren't like Iron Man, Tony Stark, where he's being snarky and clever. The Superman movie tried to reinvent that persona, and you had a Superman being a little bit childish, a little bit emo, and for me at least, and I think a lot of people in America, like that did work. So cut to Fantastic Four, and they chose, and this is all about the filmmaker's interpretation of it, and it's their right, but they chose to not modernize it at all. So you have the Fantastic Four being very wholesome. And Max talked on that last episode, we were excited about more white hats being introduced into movies. And I genuinely do believe that I'm excited for heroes that just want to do the right thing and are not anti-heroes as much, though we love anti-heroes as well. But to see more white hats, this was a movie where the Fantastic Four were legit 100% white hats. Everyone was just very, very earnest, and it just fucking bored me. And maybe that's more a reflection of me. but I think that mixed with the third act being very predictable, and the movie just didn't work for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think in order to have a white hat that works, you need to present them with a relatable choice that they have to make. And I think in Superman, I didn't get that choice, but what I thought worked about him was not that he was perfect, because he was childish. I think that was really effective, but he was still going to do the right thing. What I didn't think worked is the movie wasn't really about him maturing in any way. Like it's really easy to make a white hat boring, and you have to give them a choice between two things that are going to have negative outcomes. I think that's the way to make a white hat interesting.
To wrap up this section, those movies were successful in the American box office. They made a lot of money. They got really good reviews. And I like the fact that Max and I aren't 100% on it, because I think it'll keep it interesting. And this will further our want to understand what the heck America is interested in.
Yeah. Seeing how Fantastic Four performs over time versus Superman is going to be an interesting thing to talk about. Maybe we could explore that at the end of the summer.
Let's keep moving, Max. On to the next.
Okay, next in the medley here, we got to talk about the final Mission Impossible movie. This entire marketing campaign, and really the entire movie, we kept being reminded that this is the last one. and it's the last time. And I can't even remember how many times the characters in the movie said Ethan is the only person that can do this. In the least well covered up version of saying Tom Cruise, you're the only one who will make a movie like this. You're the only one who will perform stunts like this in front of a camera. All of which is true, but it did not make for, in my opinion, a very compelling film. I was kind of surprised that this is how it went out.
I'm a huge Tom Cruise fan. For a podcast about movies and getting people to go into movie theaters, Tom Cruise is my patron saint.
He's the dude, man.
He's the best. And I love the Mission Impossible franchise as a whole. And I would agree with you, Max. I think this one was less successful. Caveating the last action set piece is one of the greatest set pieces I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, truly incredible.
Spoilering all Mission Impossible movies, I would say. I was a little disappointed that they didn't kill Ethan Hunt. I really wish they made a bold statement and got rid of him.
Tom just doesn't want that to happen, man. He doesn't. He's like an old school movie star, and he's a white hat. Like, he always wants to be seen as the guy who does the right thing. He doesn't want the public to see him in a negative light at all, whether that's on screen or off screen. And I think that's ultimately what damaged the film, because it made it impossible to explore anything interesting but the set pieces. Also, it's like a man doing battle with AI, which is like an actor doing battle with AI, and like, which is a serious issue that we're going through.
The meta read of all of those movies are so strong, and I think that actually is one of those things that folds into the marketing. Whether audiences realize it or not, that's something that everyone subconsciously is picking up on some levels, and why people want to go see these movies where he's throwing himself off a cliff and stuff like that.
My question to you, Dave, you just said you love all these films, is if this movie was better, right? So this movie didn't perform incredibly domestically, considering how much this one cost and the previous one cost. I think combined globally, they're big money makers, but they're not huge money makers, and I don't think they're covering their budget. So as a swan song to the actor who really pushed biggest budget set pieces, the biggest ideas, the most ambitious kind of filmmaking, to answer that question of how do I get people to get off of their butts and come to the movie theater, would you consider it a success?
I think this movie will cover its bases probably with the ancillary windows of people will see it on video on demand and all that stuff. But Max, you're right. This movie was wildly expensive, and this is all rumor mill, but from what I heard, no one at Paramount Pictures, the studio that is paying for Tom Cruise's movie, no one is saying no to Tom Cruise, which is a real rarefied air. It's probably Tom Cruise, Christopher Nolan on any movie that he makes, maybe Ryan Coogler now after the success of Sinners, but most of the time, if you're an artist working in the movie business, like, someone is going to say, no, you can't afford that. We can't do it. Whereas this movie ballooned in budget. And I think because it was his swan song, they gave him a blank check to do whatever he wants with it. I think this as a capstone on 8 other movies that all were released by Paramount and have earned Paramount billions and billions of dollars. And whether they had killed Ethan Hunt or not, they have the potential to, in 5 years, in 10 years, reinvent it, maybe with Tom, and Lord knows he will still think he's around when he's 75 to jump off buildings, but maybe not. Maybe everyone loves to speculate, but maybe Glenn Powell takes the throne, or maybe
I don't know, but that's like the bigger question, right? Because even Tom Cruise couldn't save this film as our last quote-unquote movie star. And the implication that I'm curious about is that was a franchise led by a man and his face, and not by the Mission Impossible TV show from the 1960s or a popular book or, any of that stuff. It was just kind of Tom. It shouldn't have been called Mission Impossible. It should have been called Tom Cruise's movie, Tom Cruise action movie. And I don't know who in our current pantheon, whose face alone and whose personality can launch a movie that's going to make $400 million.
I'm so glad you got to that, because that's my biggest question for this section is, okay, you can maybe split hairs of if this one movie was ultimately successful. I think it did hit a cultural zeitgeist. I think Paramount touting that it was Tom Cruise's last film for this, got people out. Whether it was culturally amazing, this movie, I'd agree with you. Definitely not one of its best, but it can live within the pantheon of these 8 movies. And I think people will look back on the Mission Impossible franchise being like, oh, wow, what an accomplishment. Now, Paramount is not going to make one for the foreseeable future. And what is Tom Cruise going to do? And what can he do? And will people show up for it? I have been such a big fan of Tom Cruise, even his earlier work when he was doing movies in the 90s like A Few Good Men and Jerry Maguire, and even the weirder movies like Vanilla Sky.
Dude, Magnolia, like even his stuff from Tropic Thunder, if you go back to Rain Man, I want to see Tom doing stuff like that. He's very capable of it. I feel like maybe he needs to let go of his idea of a movie star as well. We also wanted to take a quick look at F1, and like here's Brad Pitt. Here's another movie star in kind of his swan song role, and a big expensive movie. Apple bought the rights to the F1 racing, so they made this F1 movie. I've heard a lot of mixed reviews. Some people really liked it, some people really hated it. I know people that walked out of it. My dad really loved it though, and then a buddy of mine just kind of thought the racing was cool.
Yeah, it's pretty dad-core. Though it is marketed as a broad movie, and the numbers reflect that a lot of different people did see this movie, but it feels very...
Also, internationally, it's actually probably the most interesting movie of the summer because the numbers there are fucking great.
Yeah, and they specialize on a worldwide sport. And I think to your point about Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt is still a global star. And as Max inferred, we're lacking in those greatly nowadays.
Yeah, and like... It's not like we don't have famous actors or anything like that, but there is something interesting, and I don't know what it means, that for a long time, many of the most beloved or looked up to people in our culture were people who told stories, that it was about dramatic narrative and experiences and choices that people had to make, things that people go through, struggles that they have. And you see that in sports, and you hear about that in music, but it's very, very different. It's not dramatic, and it's not narrative, and I don't know what that means. It's an interesting curiosity I have.
I agree.
Next up, I actually want to talk about the big family films of the summer, which were Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon, both of which were remakes from about 10 or 15 years ago, and both of which I had no idea how they were going to do, and then absolutely blew my expectations. Dave, what did you think about these films and how they might perform prior to their release?
I agree with you, Max. I think it's probably important to note that right before Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon came out, Disney released a modern live-action Snow White, which was an epic fail at the box office.
Yeah.
People did not show up to see that, and that movie, based on previous reimaginings of animated classics, the tenor in the industry was like, these movies don't work anymore. We used to be able to make a movie like Beauty and the Beast that starred Emma Watson a couple of years ago, and that movie made $1 billion with a B. But cut to several years later and several other iterations, the one that comes to mind is Aladdin and Will Smith dancing as the genie. But these movies don't work anymore. Capstone by Snow White, really not working.
Yeah, I mean, Dumbo tanks pretty hard, right?
Dumbo tanked. A bunch of those movies tanked. And then here comes Lilo and Stitch, which was a live-action remake of an animated movie, but it still has an animated alien in it. And I hope you can hear my contempt in the voice that I had, which I was like, this isn't going to work either. And it blew my box office expectations out of the water.
Yeah, it's ahead of Minecraft worldwide right now. It's the first movie of the year to make $1 billion. Not that a lot of movies do make $1 billion, but over the past decade or so, there was usually a couple a year that had crossed that line. For a lot of reasons, it's not really happening much anymore. I think largely because the market in China and Russia have closed for various reasons we won't get into right now. But I went back and tried to figure out what on earth was such a big deal about Lilo and Stitch, because I remember seeing it in theaters. I think I was in middle school. And I was like, that's cool, that's fun, whatever. But it didn't feel like Aladdin or The Lion King or any of that other stuff. But when this movie demolished Mission Impossible at the box office and then continued to make a ton of money and then passed Minecraft, which might be the most valuable IP, one of the most valuable IPs in the world right now, I was like, what in the hell's happening with this? Checked it out. And Lilo and Stitch spawned straight-to-video sequels, TV show spin-offs, video games, all sorts of toys. So when this came out, I think it had just a lot more appeal than I would have guessed. But what's interesting to me, the How to Train Your Dragon shot-for-shot live-action remake came out, and I think it had like a slightly stronger opening than Lilo, but then it dropped in a ways that Lilo just kept carrying on, and Lilo had a worldwide appeal that How to Train Your Dragon didn't. How to Train Your Dragon still made a lot of money, and people did really, really like it, so it's by no means a failure at all. But the fact that Lilo blew it out of the water is really interesting to me.
There is something interesting going on, bringing up Lilo and How to Train Your Dragon and Minecraft is taking a snapshot of who we are, Max, you and I, at our age, and understanding what IP is performing lately. And I think we mentioned this on an earlier podcast, but like I think we have been used to growing up in the movie business thinking that IP is a Snow White movie, which is IP from 75 years ago. But what has hit this summer are all intellectual property IP that is much more recent than that. Minecraft only started in the aughts. Lilo and Stitch was I guess a late 90s movie, maybe even a 2000s movie.
Yeah, I think it might have been like 2000 itself, but yeah. That's an interesting note because like Snow White is an old fairy tale, and Aladdin is, I think it's like a story from Arabian Nights.
Yeah, exactly. It's an Arabian Nights update.
People are less interested in the timeless literature.
Yeah, and maybe it's also just a reflection of like our age. Our initial instinct, or I'll say my initial instinct, is to say like, oh yeah, those '90s movies, that's where the IP is, and that's not what's performing. And instead, it's all of these properties that are coming up in the aughts, or maybe even the 2000 teens. Maybe because that's where the younger audience originally gotten hold of these properties. I think Minions and those movies is another example of successful, more recent IP that they've been able to make sequels and reboots and prequels and all that have been successful. All right. We're rolling right from family fare from the summer with Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon right into the horror section.
We go family right to blood and guts on Picture This.
Horror is one of the most reliable movie-going genres, and happy to see plenty of horror movies out there. Happy to see, like, over the last couple of years, good horror movies and high-concept horror movies really working. This has been an interesting summer and couple of months. We're just going to call out two that were successful. One is called Final Destination. That was released earlier in the summer by Warner Brothers. And then the other is 28 Years Later, that came out more recently, released by Sony. Two very different types of horror movies, but both very successful. I'll say that Final Destination had several movies in the aughts that were successful. And then a filmmaker named John Watts brought it back to life, and it crushed at the box office. I think most notably, and I'm throwing this to Max because he is the writer, but I think what interests me so much about Final Destination and is so different from 28 Years Later and most movies is that Final Destination is not about character or even really plot. It is just about deaths.
No, just, a brilliant concept for a movie and why it became the franchise that it is. Although I think there are characters in this film that might have been featured in previous films. Full disclosure, I didn't see it, and I should have because I knew someone who had worked on it. But yeah, it taps into a very basic fear, which is all the horrible ways that we could die at any point in our day-to-day lives. And yeah, man, coming off of the success of the Scream reboots, we got Final Destination and we got I Know What You Did Last Summer reboots. And it's very interesting to see Final Destination blowing past, I think, even what Scream did. Mm-hmm. And then I Know What You Did Last Summer, like, limping towards success. Fortunately, they did the horror movie thing where the budget actually was quite low. I think it was something like reported around 18 million, and it's about 44 worldwide right now. Although there's a good chance the marketing budget was larger than the production budget for that movie.
Could be.
But it's interesting to be like, well, why didn't that one work? I don't know if it just didn't get updated for current times. I think what's creepy about that is not as ethereal as Final Destination. I Know What You Did Last Summer, the bad guy's like a fisherman with a hook, and it taps into urban legends. And I guess that's just not really on the TikTok generation's zeitgeisty interest board, Pinterest, I don't know.
Well, this is what's so interesting, and I have a lot of sympathy for the people at movie studios that are making all kinds of movies, but let's just use this as an example. Scream was an amazing original movie and series of movies in the 90s, and they successfully rebooted it a couple of years ago. They rebooted it by bringing in the original cast from the 90s movies, as well as a young, sexy, modern cast. I'm an old guy, so I don't really know what young and sexy is, but the Scream movie was a successful what studios looked on as a desirable, successful way to reinvigorate a franchise using a pretty similar storyline to the original. Literally, I Know What You Did Last Summer had so many of the same beats to it, and I understand why that would feel like a good direction to head in. And for some reason, the movie didn't perform the same way. I don't know if that's the marketing issue or if that's the
Be a timing issue. I mean, like, this is the thing. We're looking for answers and all this, but like there was a lot of noise around Superman and Fantastic Four coming up, and people just weren't really caring to talk about I Know What You Did Last Summer, and maybe that was the thing.
Maybe you're right. And that actually transitioned into another movie that we wanted to mention, which is Megan 2.0. This is, of course, the big sequel to the original movie Megan, which blew the doors off the box office. It was a low-budget horror movie. It really hit on social media. People really gravitated towards the idea of the character Megan as this psychotic robot that was a bit of a wolf in sheep's clothing. And now, cut to 18 months later or about 2 years later, they do a sequel where they essentially, spoilers for Megan, but they essentially turn it a little less into a horror movie and a little bit more into an action movie. Think Terminator 2, in that the villain of the first one, Megan, ends up being part of the solution in the second.
Yeah.
It was given a much bigger budget as well, and then the release date was put smack dab in the middle of summer.
Yeah. I'll say this. As a guy who watched the first movie and liked the first movie, I was not interested in even a horror version of the second movie. Thing was, like, the first movie wasn't scary as a horror film. It was kind of goofy and strange and of its time. We're all kind of nervous about a robot takeover right now, and Megan was like a fun take on a robot takeover. The second one, I think, still deals with the similar themes, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's a very interesting pitch, and I probably would have bought it if I was a studio executive. I interviewed Jason Blum, who's one of the producers on the film, where they were all like looking back on it and being like, you know, it sounded like a good idea at the time, and we know exactly why it wasn't a good idea now. And, you know, that I don't think that's anybody's fault. I don't think it's the filmmaker's fault. I don't think it's any of the producers, the financiers. It's just one of those cases where it's just like, oh, it didn't work.
I think this is a hot take, not one that I totally even believe in, but we just mentioned F1. Many would make the case that it is almost beat for beat identical to a movie like Top Gun Maverick. Again, that was a plot line and storyline that I am totally on board with and really enjoyed it. Not the most original. I think in general, we Max and I, but also we Americans as audience goers, we like to constantly say that we want originality in movies. And I think we do generally believe it, but I will say that there has been a lot of success in, frankly, just getting the blueprint and bringing it up again. We're going to talk about
It's not even the numbers. It's not even close. We want originality, but we are scared of it. It's like we're all scared of change. We're all scared of trying something new. When we finally get that original movie like Sinners, and it's good and it's interesting and we could talk about it with people all over the country, it's the most rewarding feeling. But the numbers, the metrics, it's not. Even before franchise and sequel mania, the formula of rom-coms and the formula of action movies were so cut and paste. Dude, it's not even close. It's not even close.
This is funny. I think Max and I are kind of stumbling upon what I think is a pretty big theme in our overall podcast, which is what Americans think they want in the movie industry, and sometimes what we reveal based on box office numbers that they actually want. And I think there's a lot to be said about this push and pull of, like, we want the originality of Sinners, but we also really like the familiarity and the comfort of a movie like F1. And just to bring it back around, Megan is an example of, did they just stray too far from the formula? I think that was an unfortunate misstep that is hard to predict. I also think that, tying to your earlier point, the box office release date was just not smart. Max mentioned, like, it was released in the dead of summer, in the middle of just these other giant movies like Superman, like Jurassic Rebirth, where the original Megan was released in a quiet weekend in January, and I think those things really hurt it.
So, Dave, on that note, how do you think familiarity played into the success, well, not runaway success, but the definite success of a movie like 28 Years Later?
That's a great question, Max. I think it was another thing that has worked in the box office, not consistently, but frequently, is a bit of nostalgia. 28 years later, though not a remake, they were mining a property that was very successful many years ago.
Yeah, here's an interesting thing based upon what you were just saying is 28 years later, the trailer came out. And we're like, oh, I know that. That's familiar with me. But at the same time, the trailer was out there. It looked weird. It looked crazy. There was different music to it. It was cut differently than your average trailer. And the movie delivered on all those things. Crazy music, cut in a really insane, chaotic way. So it was an interesting way to give us something familiar, but where the artists involved in the film, writer, director Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, probably had a lot of fun feeling almost like it was an original film in their own franchise.
Absolutely. That ends up being a pretty fertile area for movie studios and then the marketing to explore. It's a reminder of, hey, remember this world that you were in a couple years ago that you liked? And then everyone essentially knows the tropes, so you don't have to educate the audience on something new. And then you say, well, we're going to do something you haven't seen before in this world.
Yeah, and I would like to say that if I was a studio executive, that would be what I would attack. Let's take all of our franchises and IP, and let's just let people do really original stuff with all that. And we could be creative and interesting and blah, 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 and still make some money. The counter argument to that is another monster film, but a very familiar one to us, which is Jurassic Park Rebirth, which is almost the exact opposite of what we just said. Like, it is the most familiar paint by the numbers rehash of 6 films that we've already seen. And it is just slowly, consistently devouring box office all over the world.
It's a great segue, Max, to talk about Jurassic World Rebirth.
The movie has made about $715 million worldwide. I think in the threes domestically, which is high for this year. And it was cheaper than the previous Jurassic Park movies by quite a margin, like quite a significant margin. So this is a huge success for the studio. I was excited to see it. I didn't see the last 3 Jurassic Park movies because they visually looked very unappealing to me. This one looked kind of appealing, and I just thought it was nothing. It was fine. There was nothing interesting about it, though, really.
So, Max, with that backdrop of it made over $700 million, and that's kind of the end goal, I will tell you a rumor of a story of how this movie was made, which was about 2 years ago, Universal, the studio that releases all the Jurassic movies, looked at their 2025 summer slate. And again, movies take a long time to make, so movie studios can and try to look many years in advance on what's being developed, and they try to plan out years in advance so they know what's coming and all that stuff.
Sure.
So the rumor I heard is they looked at their summer slate 2 years ago and they said, shoot, we don't have a movie. Let's just fast track another Jurassic movie. Let's write a script in, I think they said 3 months. Which
that pans out.
Yes. and we'll rush it into production and we'll shoot it as quickly as possible and we'll release it. Now, Universal has not said that formally. I think the formal public line was that the writer, an incredibly talented writer named David Koepp, has written some of the best scripts in the last 25 years.
Just an all-timer, including the original Jurassic Park.
So he rushed the movie. Universal claimed that, the script that David Koepp wrote was so good, we are pushing it into production. Meanwhile, I have heard that that's not true. They just made David Koepp deliver a script really quickly. Then they paid Scarlett Johansson a bunch of money. They paid Mahershala Ali a bunch of money.
Good, he deserved it.
And they got a new hot young star in Jonathan Bailey. They slapped him onto this as well. And they rushed this. And then to Max's point, this movie didn't aim to have any of the broader themes that other Jurassic movies have tried to take on. It did feel like a paint by numbers version of it. I have to be honest, as a summer movie goer, not thinking the way you heard me think about Eddington and the deep themes of America, as kind of a brain turn off type of movie, this was fine for me.
Dude, I'll tell you, I had an incredible experience watching this movie. It was on my birthday. I was in Vermont, and we went to this small movie theater in Springfield, Vermont. And it's family owned, so this is a big deal for me, obviously, because my dad owns a movie theater. Yeah. So I was excited to go there. And we get in there, and the entire movie theater is directed like Jurassic Park itself. The person taking tickets had a full Jurassic Park outfit on and a little baby raptor puppet. There was like Jurassic Park Jeeps behind the concessions counter. When you walk down the hallway, the lights around the door looked like the Jurassic Park gate. There was a life-size mannequin of Alan Grant standing there. You walked into the theater. There's a giant T-Rex head peeking out of the curtains.
Amazing.
And I was like, this is perfect. And then I watched the movie and I'm like, this movie is nothing, but I'm so happy to be here.
Dude, do you want to give a shout out to that theater?
Yeah, it's just called Springfield Cinemas 3. Just incredible owners, incredible movie lovers. They like to enhance the movie-going experience.
Way to go.
And let me tell you, those tickets, I think they were like $7.
Amazing.
The concession was super cheap. It's such an easy way to go out and go to the movies and have a good time. Go to their theaters. If you're anywhere near, like an hour away, I think it's still worth it.
So, Max, are we talking out of both sides of our mouth, though, when we beg that they make considerate, deliberate choices on their movies and their movie making? But here a studio just slapped together a Jurassic movie at the last minute, and you and I go see it, and we have a grand old time, and it makes over $700 million. Like, are we idiots?
I mean, look, I think I said this in our first episode. If you're a movie studio and you want to bet on the taste of Max Kessler, you probably shouldn't run a movie studio. But, look, there are things about the Jurassic World Rebirth viewing experience that felt very vapid and very hollow to me and very corporatized. Like the whole movie was about curing heart disease, but the entire movie, there's all this product placement for like beer and M&Ms and stuff like that. And it's like, we don't need to go extract blood from dinosaurs to cure heart disease. What we need to do is stop eating beer and M&Ms and shit like that. Like the movie was... It was a vapid, corporate cash grab, and it was a bummer in that sense. But, where Superman made me sad was, like I said, the Jurassic Park didn't open any doors. The doors were all closed. You sat on a roller coaster. You put the safety bar down. You flew past a couple dinosaurs, and the ride ended. And whether or not you like the ride is kind of up to you, but it delivered on the nothing that it promised. And that's empty and hollow, but at least it's not misleading.
Yeah, well said, and I think that's a good and honest reflection on, Max, you and I as moviegoers, as well as a reflection of the American audience. I think we need to allow for space for movies like that. We're going to get into it in the coming weeks, but hey, man, there's a movie called Naked Gun that's coming out, and that is trying to solve no world issues, I'm sure. Yes. But I really hope that America shows up for stuff like that in the same way that they showed up for a Jurassic movie. Probably that didn't have a lot of depth, but they just wanted to have a good time at the movies with not a lot of thought behind it.
Dude, there are so many people that I talk to who are like, I've seen every Jurassic Park movie. I've seen them multiple times, except for the first one. They're all bad. And I'm like, why do you keep watching them? And they're like, I just like them. And yeah, that's totally fair and totally fine.
All right, from dinosaurs to ballerinas. I know, Max, you wanted to talk a little bit about Ballerina, the Lionsgate release.
I think Ballerina is interesting. You didn't see it, right, Dave?
No, missed it.
Yeah. So Ballerina, it's a John Wick spinoff starring Ana de Armas. That was enough for me to get me out. But a lot of people are saying that it wasn't successful because it didn't make back its production budget, but it had some production troubles. And the director, I think, left the film halfway through or it got taken away from him, and that just made it more expensive. And I think at the end of the day, with the money that it made and the people that came out to see it, if it was Beekeeper or any other kind of like Statham level dad action movie, it would have been considered a success in ticket sales alone. They just spent too much money on it. So I don't know what that means for the John Wick franchise or for similarly kind of high concept, mid-level budget action films, but I hope they keep making them, because I did enjoy about half that movie and the other half was very confusing. So I don't know what that means for our culture, but I don't think that is a rejection of the genre itself. I think, the movie just it just didn't work for whatever reason.
Max, I think to the point, and this is a little bit of a leading question, how would you compare that movie to, did you see Atomic Blonde, which was Charlize Theron years prior? I think one of the same directors maybe, and
it's that stunt team. It's the, what is it?
87 North?
87 North, yeah. And look, here's the thing about Ballerina. They showed me things in that film that visually I hadn't seen any other place. There's an incredible flamethrower sequence. And that's what the John Wick movies are all about, right? And then every other action movie that they've gone and worked on, it's very similar. They just try and do something really cool for you that you haven't seen in another movie. And for that reason, like, Ballerina is definitely worth watching at home.
Cool.
Atomic Blonde, has, in my opinion, the best fight sequences in any film ever made. Like the hand-to-hand combat stuff in Atomic Blonde is amazing, and it did the thing that I've wanted to see in action films forever, which is when Charlize Theron got punched in that movie, she is injured in that place that she got punched for the rest of the film. And it makes the future fights that she has to get in even more interesting. Now, the movie itself is very confusing.
Yeah.
It's based off a graphic novel. It's supposed to have all this Cold War intrigue. There's like too many twists, and it's kind of boring in between. But I appreciate its ambition.
Yeah.
And it delivered in a big way. It's a sexy film. It's kind of dumb, and it's incredible to watch.
Love it. All right, keep moving. Next, we're quickly stopping by Wes Anderson.
Did either of us see this film?
We did not see this film.
I really wanted to. I really wanted to see this, and I couldn't. I don't know why I didn't make it out, but it seems like people liked it, didn't love it. People really liked Michael Cera in the film, but I don't know if it's a case of... I don't know. I mean, Wes Anderson had a couple of those movies that made insane money, like Grand Budapest Hotel. So I think maybe we think he's a bigger pull than he actually...
Yeah, I've missed the last couple of Wes movies, and as a cinephile and lover of auteur filmmakers, I don't really have a good excuse of why. I definitely was big on him from early Rushmore, Royal Tenenbaums through Moonrise Kingdom and Grand Budapest. I think around COVID, when Asteroid City started coming out, I lost focus. Maybe we were talking earlier about maybe it's all feeling a little too familiar to me, but I fully understand that this might be more my shortcoming than Wes's, because I have heard from a lot of people that these movies are pretty good. So I'm finding it more arduous to go see a Wes Anderson movie now than I have in the past, and I don't know why.
Just a couple guesses. I think you're actually hitting on, like, it seems like the movie that we've already seen, just with a different story. And it's like, yeah, so the urgency to go out and check it out is not very high, right? There's not a lot of urgency. It's definitely probably a film that I could watch at home, probably because a lot of us rewatch a lot of our favorite Wes Anderson movies at home. So maybe there's a habit thing going on there.
That's a good point.
I'm going to take a small guess. It's a comedy about, what's it, an arms smuggler, right? Or a dictator or something like that.
Yes.
I don't know. Weird time to make a comedy about that. That's like not necessarily satirical or biting in any particular way.
Yeah, maybe we don't want, maybe that's another rejection of just like, we don't want that right now in 2025.
Maybe it's not so much that like, oh, bad taste, dude, as much as like, I don't know if I'm gonna leave my house for this.
Yeah.
But I wish I had left my house for it.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep moving. I think we have a couple of titles we just want to mention and throw an idea or two out for each. We're giving each title short shrift, and we know it, but let's just go through it. Life of Chuck's, Matt.
Okay. Super quick take. Title. I don't like. Okay. There's a guy named Chuck. He has a life. Trailer. Similar to Eddington, I have no idea what this is about or what's compelling about it, so I didn't go see it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's based on a Stephen King short story that is not one of the horror titles. So they're very clear in the marketing to say, from the guy that brought you Stand By Me and Shawshank Redemption, not the guy that brought you It. Right. So it's fine. It's good. It's uplifting. It's an unusual tone. But it's worth mentioning. I did see it. It is uneven, but there are moments that got me a little misty-eyed.
I heard from a guy that it was actually quite good.
Yeah.
But I was like, yeah, whatever.
Tough movie to market. What else you got, Mac? Did you see Karate Kid?
Okay, so Karate Kid, here's why I didn't see it. I thought it was too much karate. And I don't mean quantity of karate, but I mean like these kids are not this good at karate, because these are not realistic karate moves. And kind of the appeal about the original Karate Kid was it was like a dude actually being taught karate and actually going to a real karate tournament, not doing all these fucking crazy Matrix moves and shit like that. Yeah, I thought also Jackie Chan, God, we love him so much, but he's old.
Yeah, Jackie Chan's in his 70s now. I agree. I did not see it. My holdback was there's a very successful Netflix show called Cobra Kai. And because Jackie is on the older side, and I feel like a lot of younger moviegoers don't know who that is, the young star, I think, was also in another separate successful streaming show. It all felt very streaming small. Max, maybe that's why their stunt coordinator on the movie was like, shoot, we got to do some flips and kicks and crazy stuff.
Yeah, or it might have been executive panic.
Yeah.
How about Dave? Now you saw Materialists, right? And you really liked it?
I did. I really like Materialist. This was Celine Song's follow-up to past lives, and it starred some real movie stars: Pedro Pascal, Chris Evans, and Dakota Johnson. It was marketed as a rom-com, as a New York sophisticated rom-com. The blowback after the movie's release is that most people are like, it's not funny at all. And it isn't really very funny.
It struck me as a romance, not a rom-com.
Yes.
Like the trailer felt very somber.
Great point. Yeah, I think it was a little cerebral too, which frankly, I really enjoyed it. I think it was an interesting commentary on dating in New York, dating in any big city, dating in the 21st century. The dialogue is a little stilted, is a big note that a lot of people have said. It's like, it doesn't feel very natural. But I think I was okay with that. I was like,
Chemistry?
It was a very...
How was the chemistry between the stars?
I think Dakota Johnson has a persona that it's tough to have chemistry with. She is...
I'll say this, man. You got Chris Evans and you got Pedro Pascal, and I don't want to say mean things about this person. I don't know if I've actually seen her movie, but I know there were issues with 50 Shades of Grey, and there were issues with, what was it, Madam Web?
Yep.
So, like, I don't know if that's who I would have put in that role either.
I mean, after what I said, Max, and I still liked her in a weird way, but she's not the... This is such a dated reference, but like the way that in the 90s you would put Meg Ryan in every romantic comedy, and Meg has this warmth, and though she's beautiful, there's like this approachability. Dakota Johnson is the freaking furthest thing away from that. She comes across as very stoic and very cold. I think maybe actually resonates with a modern audience. I think it's a very different take on who would be in the center of a romance or a rom-com or a comedy. I like weirdly liked it. It made $12 million opening weekend, and I think did okay at the box office.
I think it actually did pretty good overall.
Good.
But again, this is all relative, right? It was a cheap movie.
Yeah,
make cheap movies, and like it all make money. You don't have to like wring your hands about it all.
But
real quick, what if? Who would you cast that might have popped a little bit more?
This is just this isn't even specific to this movie, but this has just been rattling around in my head since the movie Challengers. But if you want to get a young audience into it, why not put and add a meta element to it, a real life element to it, but put Zendaya in the middle and put Tom Holland on one side and Timothy Chalamet on the other. Now those are both...
God, dude, we got to make that movie now.
Those are both children in our eyes, Max, but I think those are young, sexy stars. Zendaya and Tom Holland are obviously dating. Zendaya and Timothy Chalamet, I think, have a friendship relationship with. And seeing Zendaya in the middle of a love triangle, I think, worked once in a pretty strange tennis movie, and I think putting them in sexy New York in great wardrobe and good dialogue would be great.
I loved Challengers so much, but that's for another time.
All right. Speaking of materialists, Pedro Pascal, where have you not seen him?
Dude, I mean, I haven't seen any of his movies this summer, so I have not seen him in a lot of stuff. But a crazy year for him. Last of Us, Materialists, a success. Eddington, he's probably proud of that film, even if America has mixed feelings about it. And then Fantastic Four, big Marvel franchise for him. He's the dude right now. And I think even if we don't like his movies, this is going back to our movie star conversation earlier. Maybe Pedro's the dude. Maybe he's going to hold on. Maybe he's going to carry the flame. But, like, I think we all like this guy quite a bit, no matter what he does or if he fails or if he succeeds.
I agree. I think he's taken on some very unusual roles. Fantastic Four this summer is probably his biggest role, and frankly, I think his least interesting, because he plays the strong-jawed lead and doesn't have a lot of opportunity to make jokes. But
it's weird that he goes from playing Joel from Last of Us to something like that. That's interesting, because he was awesome as... I'll be honest, like, I played the video games and I had mixed feelings about the show, but I thought he was a great Joel. I thought he was a really good cast.
I agree. All right, well, Max, this was so fun. This was quite the medley, even though I think we sometimes got into like ballad stages. We went deep in a couple areas instead of keeping it medley-like. But this was really fun. We covered a lot of topics. I think we got more fun topics still to talk about in the summer. Naked Gun is coming out this weekend.
Very jazzed.
A great horror movie is coming out in early August called Weapons that I'm excited to talk about with you, Max.
Very excited about that too, yeah.
But until then, I think we checked off a lot of the things that were scratching in our heads. You got anything else?
I mean, I got more, but I'm gonna shut up and we're gonna let you guys go, because there is so much to see in the theaters right now. So we'll see you at the movies.
See you guys.